What's up, everybody? Just a quick little video today for this week. We're going to talk about an easy way for you to get started using to introduce coding into the young primary grades, so from kindergarten up to, let's say, grade 3. So what I've done is I've bought this game off of Amazon. I'll put the link down below in the description, called Robot Races. It was about 30 bucks shipped to me Canadian, and what it does is it gives you this mat that you can lay out using these game cards that they provide, and the levels get harder as you go on. And what you do is you have one child become a robot, like you can see on the back of the box here, and you put a start position, an end position, and then you put some obstacles in the way. So what you're going to end up doing is getting the kids to give instruction using cards like these, which are simple arrow cards, to get the robot, to program the robot to go from the start position to the end position and around the obstacles. It's a really super easy way to start to get kids to understand that coding is just another word for instructions. So what I generally like to do is I like to start off by getting them in a group and then asking them if any of them have ever coded before. And most of them will say, on the younger grades, they'll say yes, and they may have examples that aren't quite a fit, as you know, if you're a teacher in those grades. But other times they'll say no, and I'll ask them if they've ever baked anything with their mums or dads. And almost all of them put their hands up, and I'll ask them how they got started. So some will say, well, we mixed all the ingredients together. And I'll say, well, how did you know what ingredients to mix together and how much of each ingredients? So what they end up realizing is that a recipe is just a set of code to come out with muffins or cookies or whatever it is they're baking. So we start to make that analogy, and then we start with the game. So what I'm going to do in this next little segment is show you a really simple, and I'm not even going to follow the rules that come with this game because there's a timer and there's different things that you can do with it. I'm just going to set up a very basic version of it and just show you how you can use it in your classroom to introduce coding. And then from there I usually go on to Scratch Junior, and sometimes I introduce Sphero. I have a little Sphero Mini I bring in to show them that we block coded basically using this game. Then we went on and did it with Scratch, and then we used block coding to program the Sphero Mini robot, and it all starts to make connections for them. So I'll show you how this game works, and we'll go from there. So I've switched over to the handheld tripod just to show you. I've set up a simple version of this coding mat. So it's basically just a grid, and it gives you these start position, which is the green dot, and then I've put in a roadblock in the middle here, and then the red sort of circle at the end is the end spot. So you would get a kid to start on this green space, and then using these type of cards, which are directional arrows, we get the kids to figure out how to move the robot from this green spot around the block to the red stop. Okay, so really simple. So we have a kid volunteer to be the robot, and we'll have the rest of the class drop these arrows. So that arrow says to take one step forward, and the robot will go stand onto this step, and you do it so on and so forth until you make it to the end. Then once we have all the arrows put down, so let's say a lot of times the kids will drop them in a pattern like this and bring it up to, pardon my jittery camera work here, and just one more will get us to the end. So let's take a look at that. So if you look, they've gotten the robot from the green start position around the roadblock to the red stop position. So I'll have them look at this and I'll say, well, how many steps did it take us? So they'll count the green arrows. So there's 3, 6, 8 steps. Then I'll get them to look at it critically and say, how could we remove some steps to make it a faster transition? So obviously if you started the turn and then went straight up rather than going 2 columns over, you could remove at least 1 step. So they'll look at that and they'll figure it out, and then I'll ask one of them to go relay it out with less steps. And I said to them, that's the whole idea around coding. You get it, you have a problem. Our problem in this case is get the robot from the green start position to the red stop position. And how many steps can we do it in? And we get it to work. You know, we may fail, we may not. We get it to work eventually, and then we look at how we did it, and then we look at improving that instruction, that number of steps, and condensing it and making it more efficient. So it's a great way to introduce block coding to your students, to get them to understand that it's just a set of instructions, and here's a really simple example of how that works for them to illustrate. Now, I've had a lot of classes that have used this, and then I've had some classes that actually have set it up as a center so that it's one of the centers when they're going around their classroom. As a grade 1 class in this case, where they would go around and they would use this as a center, and the kids would play the game and practice getting the robot from one position to the other. So really cheap, easy way for you guys to get started coding, or at least introduce coding into those very, very young grades. And it works well. I've used this lots of times. If you don't want to buy the game, which I said is like, I think around $30 off Amazon, and I'll put the link in the description below, you can certainly make a grid like this and just print out some arrows and a start and stop position. It wouldn't be hard to replicate this. So that's it for this week's video. I just wanted to go in and show you this really simple way of introducing block coding into your primary grades, and we'll catch you next week.